Now is Senator Jerry Moran. He's one of 11 Republican senators working on that bipartisan framework. And Senator, tell us a little bit about where things stand, because it's mixed messages depending on who we're listening to these days.
Well, it certainly is mixed messages here within the Capitol Dome. But I think where we are is that 21 of us have decided we want to provide a plan that can be supported, pass the United States Senate, be approved by the House, and potentially signed by the president. Infrastructure investment is important to the economy, to our ability to compete in the global economy, provide safety. It's time for us to invest in infrastructure. And just because we can't, and in my view, shouldn't try to do everything, we can do some things, and we can do it in a bipartisan way. So I think later today, the Republican members, the 11 of us in that group, will meet to have one more conversation. I would guess that it will be focused a lot on what the reports are from the Biden administration, the conversations with the two Democrat senators yesterday. The goal here for me is to certainly provide infrastructure, demonstrate to Kansans and Americans that we can do things in a bipartisan way, reduce the likelihood of the use of the opportunities Democrats have for passing things with 51 votes. I hope this prevents reconciliation use for further infrastructure issues, but most importantly, I hope this diminishes the appetite on the behalf of Democrats to end the filibuster, which I think is hugely important. The 60-vote rule brings us together. It allows for minority views to be heard, and it would be a change in the United States Senate that is damaging to the American people if that happens. So part of this is to make certain, in my view, that we demonstrate that we can do things in a bipartisan way that doesn't damage the country, and is not spending $6 trillion that was spoken about by the chairman of the Budget Committee, Bernie Sanders, yesterday on the news shows.
The thing that we keep hearing, though, is that the devil is in the details, especially in how you pay for all of these things. So where do you think we're headed if you guys are really going to get down to business and scope out more of this? What's it going to look like?
Well, I think we are getting closer to an agreement on what the pay-fors are. Infrastructure has always been popular with politicians. How to pay for it is never an easy decision, and one that lacks popularity. But it seems to me that we are headed in a way that will pay for infrastructure without a raise in taxes. The issue we've had with the Biden administration really has been twofold. Their opposition to indexing the gas tax, and their opposition to having electric vehicles pay anything toward infrastructure. And so those conversations yesterday may have fleshed out what the administration, I think it was said over the weekend, that we're now, if you're denying us the pay-fors that the 21 of us have agreed to, or at least agreed to in concept, then it's up to the White House to tell us what would be acceptable without raising taxes, without undermining the Trump tax cuts of 2017. So it is still work in progress, but everybody seems in that group seems like this is something that is accomplishable. But a lot is going to be determined by what the Democrat reaction is. Senator Schumer, who's indicated he's willing to do two bills, including the one that we're talking about. And what is the White House finally where are they going to land? Is President Biden going to live up to his campaign advocacy for bipartisanship? And what I heard as an inaugural address, those words mean something? So I hope there is give and take by the administration, and again, for the reasons that I've outlined.
Hey, Senator, I don't know how close together the two sides are, but I figured that climate resiliency was not a Republican. You probably didn't come up with that. I'm wondering whether, when you hear that term, could you just maybe give me more insight in exactly what you're talking about there, and does it differ from climate justice? Do you know? Could you go into both of those and let me know what we're talking? I see it's $50 billion, but what exactly are we getting for that? How do we get the climate to be more resilient? What is that?
Well, I think what we're talking about is the opportunity for us to move in the direction of new technologies, things that reduce the consumption of fuels based upon an oil-based economy. But that is, in many ways, a sticking point, has been a sticking point between Republicans and Democrats as we've sorted this out. And it's necessary to have that component. Again, it's what I hope will prevent us from having reconciliation that spends billions of dollars more on things that are not traditionally thought of as infrastructure. So it is a challenge for us to bring Republicans and Democrats together generally over this particular issue.
When you say you all have agreed for some pay-fors, you as the Republicans involved in this bipartisanship effort. I'm guessing you mean gas tax. What other potential increases are you considering? What other ways to pay for this if you don't want to undo any of the taxes put in place in 2017?
I did try to correct myself when I said we've agreed to pay for it. So we've agreed to them in concept. I don't want to tie anybody to a definition yet. But it is infrastructure investment by the private sector. It's public partnerships that allow for the borrowing capacity of the federal government to lend itself toward infrastructure investment. It's the opportunity for us to, in my view, have all vehicles who utilize the roads pay for them, including electric vehicles. And at one point in time, the conversation was about indexing the gas tax. It's also, most importantly, utilizing much of the money that has been appropriated for COVID relief by the federal government, by the federal taxpayers, and returning it to the Treasury for purposes of investment in infrastructure, that part which is unspent, and it's hundreds of billions of dollars, and it's a significant component. I recognize that perhaps is not the most conservative position to take, in the sense that if we aren't going to spend the money on how it's appropriated, maybe we shouldn't spend it at all. But that's probably not an option here. Better for me, in my view, to see that we spend it on things that do matter, infrastructure being one of those.
My concern with this is when you start drawing these lines in the sand again, just like the Biden administration has said that they are not going to raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000, that means that they're not going to be able to go along with the gas tax or a use tax or anything with electric vehicles. I just don't see how you all get to that spot when you have both drawn these red lines and it doesn't leave any way to pay for it kind of in the middle.
Well, my hope is that those who are drawing red lines are doing so for purposes of negotiation. We've seen plenty of instances in which individual elected officials have said, this is our red line, and then crossed it. And so for purposes of negotiation, people are saying that I can't do this, or I won't do this. We can't go to that point. And I hope when the time comes, which I think is now, is soon, that there's a recognition that those red lines were, they were goals, but still, in order to get a bipartisan agreement, every once in a while, people have to take a step, an inch or two, across what they described as a red line.
So you'd be willing to step across that red line and say, okay, maybe we will raise some taxes on corporations or on high-end individuals too?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
I said you'd be willing to step across that line that the Republicans have drawn, where you say maybe we would be willing to raise taxes somewhat on either corporations or wealthy individuals.
I think there's an essential component of most Republicans' positions, which is we're not going to undermine the 2017 tax bill, something we all voted for, something we think was important to growing the economy and putting people back to work. And so I think that we would certainly say today that's a red line. It's certainly one of mine, in which you can't ask Republicans to undo something that they have fought for and achieved and believe is important. Democrats have those issues as well. We understand. Right. I mean, we've been involved in the issue of Obamacare for a long time, and it is just one of those things that politically it's unacceptable, and in my view, economically bad policy to make any significant changes or changes in that 2017 tax bill.
Yeah, I guess that's why we always get down to the devil being in the details. It's pretty tricky. Senator Moran,
we've said that many times, and it's right.
Yeah, right. It's really good to see you today. Thank you for your time, and good luck.
Thank you for your time.